Hello, insomniacs, fellow night owls, or maybe you're an overnight driver, maybe security somewhere, or at the plant. Anyone pulling the graveyard, welcome to the night shift. Hello, listeners and or watchers. Welcome back or welcome to the Night Shift Volumes, where I read stories from a Reddit thread that asks, what's the creepiest thing that's ever happened on the graveyard shift? Let's begin. First one up is I ate a pencil. I used to work third shift at a McDonald's, back when the 50-piece McNuggets were a thing. A man came in very late and was either very high or very drunk and ordered a grand total of 250 McNuggets. After he bought them, he sat down in the lobby and started eating them. He kept eating them until he puked, and then continued eating them until he puked again. He was then escorted out of the store, much to his displeasure. Next one up, This Worm Will Turn. Was a dispatcher at night alone in the whole office. Our department faced the front of the building and had a large glass window. The large window had the large vertical blinds. You couldn't be seen from outside, but you could somewhat see what is outside. One night, about 2 a.m., from the corner of my eye, I see a movement outside. I got up and inspect and see a homeless dude, buck naked, all soaped up, taking a full-on bathing session in the auto sprinklers. Dude was totally giving some attention to the nether regions when he noticed me and said, if you don't like it, don't look at it. And I couldn't argue with that, so I went back to work. Next up, B. Hod states that he used to work at night audit at a fairly posh hotel for a mid-sized southern city. His favorite experience was when two young military chaps came in with their lady friends. You could tell from their demeanor they were uncomfortable with the surroundings. It was called the Carnegie Hotel and tried to capture with some actual expensive decor the style and glamour of circa 1940s New York City. It looked preemptively crestfallen, realizing they would never be able to afford such a nice place. They discussed amongst themselves for a moment, working up the nerve to approach me just to see how much it was for a double room for the night. Eventually they asked. I checked our rooms and saw we didn't have any doubles available, but we did have 4 of 5 of our presidential suites available. I informed them that our regular roommate was $119 a night, but that unfortunately we didn't have any double rooms available. However, we did have these suites available at a rate of $260. The poor guys looked dejected, knowing that was completely unreasonable. I smiled at them, hoping they'd have the sense to ask the next question. They discussed for a minute, eventually turned to me and asked, do you have any military discounts? Of course we do. But my boss didn't want us to inform potential customers of any chance of a discount. I was able to hook these guys up with a hella nice suite for $55, better than almost anything else they could have gotten at any other hotel, much less one as sweet as my hotel. Maybe not crazy, but my favorite night story still. Those kids looked like I'd just given them a winning lottery ticket. Made me damn happy to be able to do something kind for good people while subtly fucking over my elitist racist boss in a way which she couldn't in public, in any public way, address me. Oh, good on you. Alright, next up is MBQT 2015. And they stayed when they worked overnights for the King of Burgers. For a short while, we got a regular 2 a.m. customer who would come through the drive-thru in an enormous H3, demanding a double bacon cheeseburger, no pickle, and a bacon cheese whopper, no onion. This wasn't weird at all, until you factor in that his entire order from "How may I take your order" to "Have a nice night" was made in a perfect foghorn leghorn voice, and some nights he showed up in a rooster costume. I say I would like me a double cheeseburger, and could y'all add bacon to that, darling? No pickle, of course. The wife will have my head. And for myself, it'll be a juicy all-American bacon cheese whopper. I say, but no onions. It give me gas, you see. It was the best 6 weeks of my life. Beautifully Deranged states that there were numerous reports of ghosts coming from other night staff for a couple of weeks. The second night I worked, I bumped into it. It was a little Swedish backpacker who'd been living in the supermarket for the past 2 weeks. Clever bastard. No ghost, just somebody mooching. Next up, Fritzy41. You used to work 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. as a shunter, that is driving a tractor moving trailers around, at a mill in Quebec. Around 3 a.m., a truck comes into the holding area and flashes his lights at me. I'm thinking he just wants me to sign his bills, so I continue bagging a trailer into its spot. As I'm disconnecting my airlines to the trailer, I can feel someone behind me and I spin around. The driver that was flashing his lights is now coming towards me with his shirt ripped open. His face is gray and he's sweating. It's -3 degrees out, so it's not t-shirt weather. He tells me I need to call 911 because he's having a heart attack. Long story short, I call, we send an ambulance, it misses the turn, I have to chase them down the road. The paramedics tell me it wasn't a heart attack, but that his heart suddenly jumped up to 220 beats a minute. He was okay, and he still drives. I saw him about 2 months later. There was also a time that 3 wolves killed a deer in our parking lot, and I just didn't see that, only the aftermath. Next up is from Katona. Certainly not the craziest story, but I found it to be utterly hilarious. I was working the front desk of a hotel. Sometime after 1 a.m., a group of working ladies came through the door of my lobby. As the first one comes through the door, I'm pretty surprised, as the hotel is in a nice upscale suburban area, and prostitutes are not something that we get around here normally. But my astonishment only grows as 2, 3, several more glammed up, overly perfumed, half-naked ladies come piling into my lobby. A total of about 15 of them have just come through the door, and behind me, ushering them in, follows a young man who didn't look any older than 16, a total baby face. The kid winks at the group of women and says, "Just a moment, ladies," to them all, and I am speechless. The kid comes up to the desk and says that he has a reservation. I ask for his ID for check-in, and we certainly do have a reservation under his name. However, he's only 17, and we don't rent rooms to anyone under 18 at the hotel. So here's this kid, apparently having somehow hired every single hooker he could possibly find from God only knows where, unable to provide for his newfound harem as he had planned with the hotel room. But to be honest, I almost felt a bit bad telling him this kid had some balls. I explain our age policy, and he simply says, "Well, that's a shame," with this look in his eyes like he was fucking James Bond or something, and then turns from the desk to leave. Cue all 15 or so of these ladies flocking to his side, putting their arms around him, patting him on the back, and cooing at him with, "Don't worry, honey, we can get us a room. Don't you worry one bit. We'll just go down the road," in the most soft, motherly way a group of prostitutes can possibly sound. They flock out the door holding his hands, and he turns to me and flashes the biggest damn grin possible as he leaves. Well, happy birthday, kid. This next one is submitted by Sam_Neil. I am an EMT. Maybe a year ago I picked up overtime working 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. At around 3 a.m., we get a call with no supplemental information. We head over, and the address is an enormous Masonic temple. Huge pillars, lots of marble, you get the idea. we find a woman pounding hysterically on the giant oak doors. They are solidly 12 feet tall and feel like they're a foot thick. She tells us that her boyfriend, who is in charge of locking up the night, texted her 1 hour ago saying he had chest pain, shortness of breath, was extremely nauseous, had classic symptoms of a heart attack, and she reports he's no longer answering his phone and is locked inside somewhere. We call firefighters to come break down the door, which they do with considerable effort, but having gained entry, we realize that our work has just begun. The temple is 5 stories tall and about half a city block. Of course, we can't find any light switches anywhere, and the interior is even spookier than the exterior. We begin searching room by room, floor by floor. The fact that it's in the middle of the night and we are in pitch-black, unfamiliar building with freaky interior design, running around with flashlights, and that we ultimately think we are searching for a corpse, all led to a lot of jumpiness. Each floor we climb, things get even spookier. By the 4th floor, there are lots of candles, velvet, traditional scary shit laying around. We get up to the 5th and final floor, and at the end of a long dark hall, we see a closed door with a light on behind it. My partner and I are both totally freaked out at this point, and as we creep towards the door, our hearts are beating faster and faster. We look at each other, take a deep breath, throw open the door, and dude is masturbating at his computer with headphones on. He jumps up and starts screaming. We run out of the room screaming. The firefighters hear our screams and they start screaming, and after we calm down, he explains that he had eaten a burrito earlier and texted his girlfriend complaining of gas pains. We left as he started to wonder out loud how he'd gotten inside, given that he had locked the front doors. Last up, Archaeoholic. When I worked the night audit shift at a hotel, I was assaulted by a guy who wanted to go to jail to be with his brother. We full-on trashed the lobby of the hotel. During the course of our brawl, he got a hold of a broken leg of a chair and hit me over the head with it. I got him in a headlock and pummeled his face. There was a Denny's across the parking lot that on any other night would have had 4 cop cars, but there were none that night. Luckily, after I called 911 twice, a very surprised guest came down to check out. He left. The cops finally came. Couldn't believe there was no reason for this asshole to attack me. Apparently, this kid was well known to the cops for beating his grandparents, who he lived with, but they would never press charges. I had no such problem. He ended up getting 2 years in the pokey. About 3 years later, I was watching the news and saw where he'd gotten into a shootout with the cops. Unfortunately, he lived, and I checked the state prison system website from time to time, and last I checked, he's still in there. He's got all the shitty prison tats to prove it, too. As always, thanks for listening, and have a great night at work.